Hi everyone, I'm Naman Gupta from zbyte and welcome to the second episode of Take On Web3. Today I have Abhay Tandon with me from TVS Motors and he's a digital transformation officer and so good to have you here, Abhay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Naman, for inviting me, and pleasure to be here.
Thank you. All right. So now the whole context we are sort of setting up for today's session is the entire Web3 and the metaverse and the NFT space is sort of is it like a multivitamin for the entire developer community and the entire brands that are out there, or is it like a painkiller? Right. So this is sort of a topic that we are going to discuss today because we have been working since a long time in the entire retail industry. You know the customers and consumers how they behave when you try to create a lot of marketing campaigns as well, right? So what is your take on Web3, Abhay? Like how progressive we are in terms of not just as a brand, but also you're interacting with a lot of developers as well. How do you see the entire Web3 space currently?
I mean, first of all, Naman, very interesting analogy, right? Multivitamins and painkillers, right? I think Web3 has the power to be both, right? When I look at multivitamins, it's in my head a precursor to ensure that you are healthy, right? So there's certain applications which are where Web3 is coming in and saying that, hey, listen, we are way more efficient. We are solving for a major challenge. And that, as you start scaling up, tomorrow in the real world, you will face these problems, and Web3 is going to solve for those today, right? For you. So you're going to be ahead
Yes.
of the curve. But at the same time, there are also a lot of pain points that most companies are facing today, right? And it could be a bunch of applications around manufacturing, supply chain, so on and so forth, right? Where Web3 is saying that, it's not something that's going to be making you healthy in the future, right? It is a
Yes.
pain point, a major pain point that you're facing, and you're not able to solve for that today. And Web3 as
Yes.
a technology, because of its core tenets, will be able to provide a major solve for that, right? So I think it kind of works out both ways, and I think it's a very interesting phase that we are in,
Mhm.
where at least this is my perception, right? That Web3 has gone beyond the hype cycle, right? So we are
Mhm.
starting to see very clear use cases which are coming up, which are becoming much more mature, and the adopters are becoming much more mature in terms of expecting the right aspects of Web3 to be implemented in their environments, right? So that's an
Yes.
interesting
Yes.
phase that we are seeing. I think the scale will start showing up a lot more because if you look at Web3 as a technology, right? Or
Mhm.
blockchain also as a technology, DLT as well. It's not been new. It's been there for a while now, right?
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
way back in 2014 or 15, something like that. Walmart did put the whole supply chain, from
Yes.
farm to fork kind of an environment on on
Yeah.
on a chain, right? And since
Yes.
then, there's been a massive change in terms of how the adoption has happened and how these technologies have evolved over a period of time. The costs have gone down and so on and so forth.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So, what is like since you are interacting and you yourself is sort of transforming the a company which has been more focused towards how the consumers are actually they themselves want to engage with a brand, right? But now you are personally responsible for that transformation, not just for a brand side, but also shifting the focus of a consumer as well. They might not even think the value it's there in the NFTs, right? So how you are actually evangelizing the entire mindset shift? Reason I'm asking you because to even solve a pain point of a developer like a company like us zbyte, right? What we are trying to do is to actually help developers to build a low code dApp. Right on our platform, it's a unified platform. So we understood before even solving a problem of a retail user or a consumer, right? We want to solve the pain point of the developer, right? So just want to understand your process that how we are instigating that trust, you know, in the entire industry that, hey, this is the value. What's that process that you are actually following?
Sure. Thank you so much, Naman. That's a very critical question, in my opinion, right? Because every time you talk about transformation or transitioning, right, there's always going to be a little, or I mean, depends upon the amount of resistance, but it could be a little, it could be a lot more as well, right? Depending on the technology as well and its adoption. Uh,
Mhm.
I do see that there's a major mindset shift required when we talk to people about Web3, right? Be it
Mhm.
internal enterprise stakeholders or
Mhm.
to the consumers. Now, like for example, if I take a use case of a metaverse environment, right?
Got it.
Uh,
Yeah.
in a metaverse environment, so far, what most people perceive metaverse to be is an engagement platform. And I
Hmm.
think there's a lot beyond that. So one of the things that I've at least tried to position this is that, it's not just an engagement platform. We are talking about an NPS increase, right? Or loyalty
Yes.
increase. We are talking about a whole monetization layer coming into metaverse, right? By
Hmm.
talking about commerce of various sorts as well, right?
Hmm.
And both direct value, indirect value, and brand value comes in together to create that kind of a financial impact, as well as
Got it.
other impacts on NPS and other scores as well, right? So
Got it.
you can look at metaverse as another channel. Like my analogy to metaverse versus websites today is this,
Hmm.
that it's equivalent to having a hot desk versus a dedicated seat. In a
Hmm.
hot
Hmm.
desk, you would not keep your family photographs, your awards and accolades, and your own personal graffiti, etc., right? Because the
Got it.
next day when you come back, you may not have the same desk available to you, right?
Got it.
But
Yeah.
if you have a dedicated seat, then you know that you have a pedestal to it. You want to decorate that environment and make sure that it kind of gives away your own signature, right? That's the
Hmm.
difference between a website where you lose a lot of information every time you move out of a website, right? Because it's going to capture and give you some information. But on a
Hmm.
metaverse, it's going to be your environment, your home,
Yeah.
interoperability, so on and so forth. These factors will make it much more meaningful. Now, there are two
Hmm.
again aspects to it. One is that metaverse is just another channel like a WhatsApp, but much more engaging. And the
Hmm.
second, which is very crucial when we talk about this transition, is
Hmm.
people who are going to be working on building this infrastructure out for you. And that is
Hmm.
where again the challenge is that most engineering teams today in organizations would think twice about whether they can actually build out something to need to really get into an environment where they learn Solidity or other languages, other infrastructure aspects.
Got
and
it.
and companies like yours, right, very honestly, I mean, allow for these developers to actually plug and play things very, very quickly without really having enough. I mean, they don't need to have a lot of coding experience in particular tech stacks, right?
Hmm.
But they understand what
Hmm.
the overall architecture would look like, and they should be able to
Yes.
implement this fairly quickly. So this transition is also super critical, right, for people to understand that it's not just a lot of jargons being thrown at you, but it's
Yes.
made very easy for you to deploy something by capturing the core tenets of Web3.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So do you think, Abhay, that when it comes to a new technology, which is sort of itself a revolutionary thing, right? Like the mobile, when it came into the light, everything sort of disrupted, and then the internet, right? Everything, right? The same way again, Web3. But do you think over the years, not just the brands, but also the tech people, or like say developers, they're being rebellious, or they're trying to be a bit, they're resisting to adopting a certain technology until it really go mainstream, right? So have you seen that trend, and do you really think that once a lot of brands start adopting the technology, then the demand, so it's more like a reverse approach. It's like rather than going from the developers to the brands, it's more like demand from the brand side, and then the demand will generate automatically in the developers ecosystem, right? So do you think that resistance is just for the time being, and how long do you think this will stay the same? Because AI now has picked up, right? Everyone is now into AI, and it was always there. As you rightly said, these
Yeah,
technologies were always there. It's just that the right use case needs to come into the market, and at the right time
right.
with the right opportunity, right? So all the AI part, the cloud, everything is now picked up. But Web3, it still need to break that threshold, which is it's still trying to, right, break that graph,
True.
and then there's no probably a heavy upside is there, right? How long do you think, on a global market perspective, that it will take for brands to adopt this technology at a mass level, and that will ultimately follow the entire developer adoption?
Makes sense, right? And Naman, I think I'll give you a personal example, right? About 2 years ago or 2 to 3 years ago, if you would have told me that, hey, Abhay, think about wearing headsets and getting into a metaverse environment, purchasing artwork, NFTs, which are superbly expensive, right? And
Hmm.
build your home in a metaverse. I would have said, are you mad? I'd rather live
Hmm.
in this physical world and buy a fancy painting, right, which would cost me a lot of, I mean, hundreds and thousands of dollars, right? But I'd rather
Hmm.
do that than create an environment which is virtual where I have a very fancy home, irrespective of wherever I'm living in the real world, right? But the
Yes.
funny thing is, and the that's adoption at my level. That's my personal. That was my personal thought process, right? But then you
Yeah.
start seeing a lot of new age consumers, Gen
Yes.
Zs to Gen, I don't know, whatever, Z alphas or whatever, right? You want to call them now,
Yes.
12 and lesser, right? They're all
Yeah.
on Fortnite, Roblox, and a lot of other platforms today, right?
Mm.
So if as a brand, I want to make sure that I'm able to market my
Mm.
product to them even without being in that market effectively, I
Mm.
can do that via these platforms and my CAC comes down. So that's where unit economics comes in, and that is where
Yes.
corporates and brands are now able to evangelize that, hey, listen, if I can reach out to 100,000 people per
Mm.
month, right, and
Mm.
engage them, and the
Mm.
CAC is superbly low,
Correct.
why am I not already doing that, right?
Abs-
So
yes.
as an
Yes.
innovator, that's where I thought that, hey, listen, I mean, just because I can't relate to wearing headsets doesn't
Mm.
mean others are not able to relate to that as well. People are purchasing, there's a lot of commerce happening on metaverses, right? So why
Mm.
are we not doing it too, right?
Got
And
it.
and the second thing is that, this transition also allowed for the cost to come down further,
Mm.
right,
Mm.
on the blockchain. Two, you see that, a lot of these platforms today are becoming more seamless, very
Yes.
easy to integrate with as well,
Mm.
right? So that was another transition that happened, which made me feel that, hey, listen, we should all start looking at it. Now, have there been failures from a now from a brand's adoption standpoint in terms of value creation, not just from a consumer standpoint, but
Mm.
actual financial dollars, right?
Mm. Mm.
So if
Mm.
you look at it, Maersk and IBM failed; they stopped the program,
Mm.
right? But at the same time, you saw Faurecia put the whole supply chain
Mm.
for compliances and other aspects, duplication efforts, and so on and so forth on a chain, right? And they have
Got
been
it.
successful. So there have been some success stories. There have been a lot of failures as well. Now the
Mm.
failures have happened because of certain aspects where the technology was not as seamless earlier. For example, today I
Mm.
don't need a headset, right?
Mm.
I can be in a
Mm.
metaverse without a headset, right? So that means
Yeah.
it's now accessible a lot more than what it was. I mean,
Yes.
if I couldn't have got masses to adopt that, but today,
Yes.
if I can be in a metaverse on my phone,
Mm.
right, on a handheld device, it's way
Yes.
easier for anyone to just get immersed in that, right? And that's what we did with TVS Motors as well last year when we launched it.
Correct.
So with these changes, now you are actually in a much better position to capture not just the data points, but also
Mm.
the learnings effectively and showcase value. And this value
Yes.
would be in the form of financial numbers, right?
Got
So, for example, in case of Faurecia, if there's X amount of dollar savings, Y
it. Mm.
amount of revenue impact, that's
Mm.
clear signals that is going out to the rest of the ecosystem that if Faurecia is able to do it, why are we not doing it already? And that
Mm.
is
Mm.
allowing for the change to happen. In terms of timeline, I'm still assuming that this might take anything between 2 to 5 years for a massive adoption. But
Mm.
you'll see over the next 2 to 5 years, it going from early adoption to mid-scale adoption, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's still some challenges, of course, but I think as we proceed right over the next 2 to 5
Mm.
years, a lot of these challenges would be handled. For example, like I mentioned earlier, the no code low code environment, right, which makes it
Yes.
much easier for us to dabble into that space, look at a proof of concept, and start seeing some value, right? Clear proof of
Yes.
value. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you still need every stakeholder to be on the chain. In
Yes.
certain use cases, that is still going to be a challenge, right? Because people still
Yes.
do not know API integrations. Forget about being on the chain, right? So
Being on a
those
chain.
are going to be slightly more tricky.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason probably, that's the reason, a company is trying to facilitate that platform need that, hey, you're a brand, you understand your customer need. What is your first priority? Which is, engaging more and more customers with a high engagement rate, right? So even they want to get into Web3, even they don't need a way, or I mean, they don't know a way to figure out how to actually bring all the Web3 complexity into their existing Web2 ecosystem. That's where a company like us really help because a barrier to Web3 shouldn't be there, like
Yep.
rightfully, right? Until unless we really scrap that barrier, even brands will keep on resisting, right? It will always be like a multivitamin or not like a painkiller, right? So I still believe that to move from that multivitamin to like a painkiller, there's a gap, and the brands are who are actually resisting that one part could be at least solved by low code so that they can say, okay, hey, we have this platform and this is how we can use and this is how we can really engage, right? So
Right.
but having said that, a lot of brands, not just in APAC countries, but even globally, right? They have this sort of, they still consider this as an added thing. So as a transformation officer, what is your thoughts? Is it still uh, like a not so needed thing, or is it like, are you trying to, do you need to really push that, hey, that NFT marketing campaign could really get us and reap us more benefits than the better the ROI, because with the existing dollars we are paying on all these big five tech companies, or is it like still like a multivitamin, or is it like a painkiller? Just to, I know, on a global perspective, actually, not just see, we are already from Web3, right? We understand the need of that ecosystem. But what is the top level overview of the company? Say Starbucks can manage, right, to have their own
Right.
loyalty program. They are having it, since a long time, but now they can move that. But what about the mid-scale brands which are there? Like, say, not just Fortune 500, but like Fortune 5,000 companies.
Right.
It might take some time, but what is the thought process currently that these developers can actually solve?
Sure. So I think, here to your point, I think it depends from industry to industry, right? Certain industries have already adopted it and adopted it much better, right? For example, when you talk about NFTs,
Hmm,
fashion, entertainment,
hmm,
media,
hmm.
these are the places where NFTs have picked up very, very well, right?
Yes.
Already, right? You're starting to see very strong, tangible outcomes coming from NFTs. Now,
Hmm,
there are other industries. So that is one tangent, right? There are other
hmm,
industries which are still taking it a little slow. Like, for example, if I talk about automotive and mobility, right?
hmm,
It's also about few players who are trying out something and then creating a very bad experience out of it, right? So
hmm,
I will not name, of course, the organization of four-wheeler company, but these guys launched their NFTs
hmm,
and they were able to generate a very small sum of value, which they kind
hmm.
of clearly called out in a PR environment that, hey, listen, we are
Ah,
donating it to CSR. Now, this is
mm,
a wrong signal. You are not talking about CSR. You should not talk about
mm,
it, about NFTs, using NFTs as a CSR channel, right? A source of revenue, right? You
yeah.
should be able to show a new line of revenue,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So that's one industry specificity. Second
mm,
is the specificity around business logic,
mm,
right? If you're using NFTs, what's the value proposition that you're creating for the consumers for those NFTs? Is the value proposition clear? NFT enables you to push out an asset to the consumer in a very interactive way. But what
mm,
exactly is the asset that you're giving them,
mm.
right? So that's a business logic where businesses need to use their heads a little more creatively and think about, what are they giving to the consumers? Is this really creating value, right? And third
Got it.
is, in my opinion, is the jargons, right? No
Got
one
it.
addresses this, but funnily enough, when you talk to Web3 startups or companies, right, or the
Mm,
developers, they throw a bunch of jargons at you. For a
yes.
person who's not abreast with the latest tech, you're making it sound so difficult that they're
Mm,
like, I don't know what these guys are talking about. They're talking Greek and Latin, so I'm out, right?
yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, one second, just take a step back, right? I recently invested in a startup called Monet, and Monet
Uh,
says that they are monetizing trust networks.
okay.
So a lot of people said that, hey, listen, through smart contracts, of course, and people were like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I
Yes.
broke down the problem from them and I told them this is the problem that exists in Web2 space. This is what a
Yeah.
smart contract will do to change that, and we're monetizing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then they were like, wow, man, this is brilliant. A bunch
Brilliant.
of my friends then invested in the startup as well, right? So
Mm,
it's
mm.
about making sure that you break it down into the most simplistic parts and then
Simplest.
convey that.
Got
So
it.
those are the three things, right? But I think NFTs have a huge scope in
Mm,
terms of providing very tangible benefits to the consumers in a digital
mm.
mechanism, through a digital mechanism, right? So it makes it much more
Got
efficient, much more seamless, and
got
actually
it.
cost efficient as well.
Absolutely. It is definitely a cost efficient, at least when we compare that to the current ROI that we are getting, from the existing marketing channels, probably. All right. So, last question from this session, a lot of developers who are joining the force of the entire Web3 ecosystem, they also have one tangent to rely upon, which is the cryptocurrency part, right? Do you think that, like, say, assume a hypothetical situation that in a specific country something happened, maybe some regulation, extreme regulation happened to the cryptocurrency part? Do you think we really want to clear that myth, or like a misconception, that will it really affect the entire Web3 or a blockchain as a technology, or like, say, what NFT is helping the brands to actually drive much more meaningful conversation and engagement and revenue, from the entire technology that is there, right? Can you like throw some light and clear this misconception about the entire crypto equals to Web3 space, considering a developer mindset, in
Right.
that answer? Yeah, yeah.
All right. So firstly and foremostly, right, people, I don't know why are people confused about crypto and equate that crypto is Web3, right?
Mm,
Crypto is one part of Web3. Crypto is not Web3, right?
mm,
And again, Metaverse is not Web3. Metaverse on a chain is Web3, right?
mm,
So people
mm,
have a lot of confusion around this, right? So if you
mm,
look at it simplistically,
mm,
Web3 has certain core tenets like decentralization, immutability, etc., right? Transparency,
mm.
which is what makes this whole concept of blockchain very interesting for adoption.
Got it.
If we use crypto, there are going to be
Mm,
certain other financial efficiencies that can come in. But is it
yes.
necessary to use crypto? No, it's not,
Mm,
right? A lot of people have been working on blockchain without
mm,
necessarily using crypto. So
yeah.
tomorrow, if there's an issue on regulatory front in certain countries on crypto, does that impact your applications on blockchain? No, it doesn't.
Yes.
I was at a MasterCard payment summit a while
Mm,
ago,
mm,
and they were enabling in a Web3 environment
mm,
transactions by MasterCards,
mm. Oh.
right? So today you are using currencies which are not
Yes.
cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
You're talking about the other currencies, the normal transactional currencies that we use, right? Be it dollars or
Mm,
euros or rupees, right? Or pounds. And we
yeah.
are able to, have commerce enabled, transactions enabled in the Web3 world. So
Got it.
Web3 does not necessarily mean that you have to use crypto. In
Got it.
certain environments, crypto can add additional efficiencies, but it's not necessary again. So that's a clear
Yes.
call out in my head, right? And
Yes.
I personally, when I talk about a lot of use cases today, this
Mm,
is again my perspective, right? I have not been
mm,
using cryptocurrencies,
mm,
right? But it's not that we are not using Web3. We're still
mm,
doing Web3
mm.
applications, not using crypto
Yes.
right now. The
Yeah.
reason being, and I also agree, right, that crypto needs to be regulated. I think the regulation should be clear so that people
Yes.
know what they're dabbling into, right? So I
Yes.
think
Yes.
instead of thinking that, let those regulations not come in, I think once and for all those regulations should come in so
Should
that we have clarity in terms of how do
clarity.
we even operate in this environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think yeah, that is absolutely required, and I think that's the reason. Probably one way to do that could be like having tokens, which is like say in our platform as well. Like we have got like zbyte token, right? Like so even to deploy for the developers to deploy it on like say chain like say Polygon or Avalanche, they don't need to own that particular cryptocurrency. They can simply use the
Exactly.
tokens that the zbyte ecosystem provide, and they can still deploy the same dApp on these chains as well. So yeah, that really
Totally.
makes sense, and I really hope the developers who are listening to this session would really understand, and we definitely would want a lot of questions coming in from your side, so you can drop down in the comments below as well, and definitely will try to comment as well. So thank you so much, Abhay. It was lovely chatting with you, and I think Web3 and Metaverse and the entire NFT space something like we can go for hours and hours and hours, right? So, but still, of course, we need to look at the time as well. So, but thank you so much for finding this time for us, and really great having you here. Really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naman, for hosting me and lovely interacting with you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.